Have you ever thought how convenient it would be to have a get out of jail free card? The insanity plea is used in this way all around the country. An insanity defense means the defendant admits to the action but asserts lack of culpability based on their mental state. There have been several cases in which stable people have misused the plea to their own benefit. These people make it hard to believe others who may actually have a mental illness. Even if the person is pronounced criminally insane, they are still criminals. Finally, when someone pleads the insanity defense, a mental health professional must perform a certain amount of tests to prove that the person is mentally insane. The insanity defense is taken advantage of, is manipulated, and mangled to a person's benefit. The purpose of not guilty by reason of insanity was introduced to eventually cure a defendant's disorder and to help them because of their mental illness. There are numerous amounts of cases in which there have been speculations and several pieces of evidence in which people can pick up on that the person is not mentally insane. A mother in the state of California drowned her 3-year-old daughter and was put into jail for 3 years and then released back into society and she was given treatment while incarcerated. She could have been insane, but she did not know what she was doing. On April 20th, 1999, Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris went to their high school with the intent to kill. They killed 13 people combined, 12 of them being their classmates and one teacher. They brought duffel bags full of guns and pipe bombs. Prior to April 20th, Dylan and Eric had been hanging out a lot. The two would go into the woods, shoot bottles and small animals. This gave them an adrenaline rush. After this, they began to plan the shooting. They made home videos explaining what they would do on this day. After roaming the halls, the two shooters found themselves in the library where most of the killings happened. At 12 o'clock, 12 students and one teacher were dead. Minutes later, Eric and Dylan committed suicide. Some would say that they were mentally unstable, but if they were really mentally unstable, how could they carry out such a plan? If they were still alive and pled the insanity plea, would you grant it to them? Would you let these two killers back into society? The definition of a criminal is a person who has committed a crime. The definition of a person who is criminally insane is a person who is unstable but has still committed a crime. These two definitions have one thing in common, which is the crime. To be criminally insane, you have to commit a crime. So for a person to be treated differently than someone who has committed the same exact crime but to be declared mentally unstable at the time is not fair in any way. No one should get away with any type of crime just because they pass a couple of examinations. When an individual pleads the insanity plea, they must first be inspected by several doctors to declare insanity. The irresistible impulse test allows for a defendant to be found guilty by reason of insanity if his or her mental illness means that. Okay. Next is the McNaughton rule. This states that a defendant is deemed to be legally insane if he or she was unaware of what he or she was doing at the time when the crime was committed. Juries follow the diagnostics made by professionals in deciding if the defendant is guilty or not. These rules state how psychological factors, including evidence and mental evaluations, are vital in determining the state of the defendant. This rule also shows that there can be several loopholes and disagreements among the evaluators which cause dilemmas in the case. Most of these evaluations are based on opinions, which makes them very unreliable and inaccurate. These tests help the jury make the decision, but trained professionals perform these psychological evaluations could be biased or have different opinions. Scientists who have performed these tests have stated how they can be biased and not accurate at times. So why should these tests determine the mental state of a person if not even the individuals performing a test know if they are correct or not? The insanity defense should be abolished once and for all. The opposing side would say that these criminals deserve a second chance and special treatment in life. First, how would you know if the person was even mentally unstable if the test is unreliable? Every person's definition of a person who is mentally unstable is different. If everyone's opinion is different, why should we have the insanity defense at all? In one state, a murderer could be released, but in another state, he would be tried and go to jail. It makes no sense to have a defense to measure unmeasurable principles. Others would say that people were traumatized at a young age in their life, and that is the reasoning for their crimes. If we did what the opposing side said, who would we blame? Would we blame the parents of the criminals, or the bullies, or someone else who has no control over their actions? These criminals' wrongdoings cannot be blamed on anyone but themselves. They should not receive special treatment, but they should be put into jail and tried for their crimes.